Some people's sex lives are just out of f***ing control, dude. Welcome back to the Spectral Frame. Today we're getting into an indie horror thriller, erotic thriller? Strange Darling. The movie's called Strange Darling. Written and directed by JT Mollner, Strange Darling stars modern horror icon Kyle Gallner as the demon, Willa Fitzgerald as the lady, and we had a couple fun hippie characters played by Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey, who I need to see more of. She needs to be in more things. Call me, Barbara. I can't help you at all, but I think you seem like a nice lady.
This is a dramatization of the true story of the final known killings of the most prolific and unique American serial killer of the 21st century.
Gotcha.
I want something intimate, something romantic.
I was able to actually see this movie for free through Film Independent, and I was blown away. I basically had no idea what this movie was about. I had seen another movie, Cuckoo, and saw a poster for Strange Darling. I kind of looked it up, and it looked interesting. It looked right up my alley. And so when I saw an opportunity for a free screening, I had to take it, and this one really blew me away. I loved this movie. I was immediately floored, and luckily, to get some more of that, the screening actually had a Q&A with writer-director JT Mollner, star Willa Fitzgerald, and DP, director of photography, Giovanni Ribisi. Yes, that one. It was really cool to hear their talk and how the film came together, and yeah, it was a really great Q&A. I've been to a lot of these Q&As, and there's some really bad ones. Looking at you, the moderator for Infinity Pool last year, that was a terrible Q&A. Do better. Nobody wants to hear about your journey. Just ask the questions to Mia Goth, please. I'm begging you.
Do you have any idea the kind of risks a woman like me takes every time she agrees to have a little fun?
Never thought about it that way.
You seem like a nice guy. Love scar. But the real issue is safety. Love wound. Are you a serial killer?
So Strange Darling is about a one-night stand that turns into a light murder spree by a serial killer, nothing like you would expect. Imagine what you get with that premise, think about it for a second, crumble it up into a little ball, and throw it away. Insert basketball reference here. Basically, this movie is nothing like you would expect, but in the best way. It's told non-linearly, so out of order, in 6 different chapters. We start with chapter 3, but through those 6 chapters, we discover a little more each time, going back and forth in time to reveal the entire story. It basically starts out with this insane chase sequence and just gets weirder and weirder as we learn more and more. I was on the absolute edge of my seat. You don't really know who these people are when they're introduced, and it just, the more you learn, the more wild this thing gets. Oh my god. I love this movie.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
Before we get into it, this is going to be spoiler-free at first, and then I'll have a spoiler section, because I don't feel like I can really talk about this movie unless we talk about spoilers. It's kind of the whole thing. If you want to see this movie, go see it. It's a lot of fun.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
So first on my likes, the structure of this thing. As I said before, it's a non-linear structure, and that's what makes this movie shine the most. I'm a sucker for that stuff. This is a little more structured than that, in the way that there's chapter marks. It basically tells you immediately that this story is non-linear, takes place in 6 chapters. We start with chapter 3. This could have been gimmicky. They're kind of making a big deal out of the non-linearness of the story. I held on to my reservations, but as this thing played out, you cannot deny that this story had to be told this way. If it was told in a linear fashion, it would be less engaging, I think. This structure allowed for so many fun twists and turns throughout that even when you learn stuff about the movie, it's still not what you think it is. You think you got to the reveal, it's not there yet. Give it time. But in terms of the things that this structure really does play with, it is expectations. The most important thing in thrillers and horrors and comedy especially is your expectations as an audience and how the movie can subvert those to surprise you.
You know you asked for this, right?
Another thing I really like about this is the suspense. That is kind of built in inherently with the structure, but I was on the edge of my seat. There's so much stuff going on, and the characters and the scenes are so wild, and you're plopped into them unexpectedly without that much context, and holy shit, this thing just had my mind going the whole time. I was in so much suspense. Who am I rooting for? I just know that this person is trying to get away from this other person, and I'm freaked out and I have no idea what's going to happen. It pretty much just lands you right in the middle of the story, and I feel so tense. Even when you discover some of these things and more of the plot and story are revealed to you, it still doesn't take down any of that suspense. I have knots in my back just thinking about it. If I wasn't so ticklish, I would love a massage right now.
I don't know why this isn't working.
It's your idea.
Maybe it's you.
On top of the structure, one of the things that I think aided in that suspense is the performances. It is such a rich playground full of expectations and reveals and stuff that allow all of these actors to just really dig in and give us everything they got. And they did. Kyle Gallner, I love in pretty much everything he does. He plays the demon, take of that what you will, but he brings that exact intensity that we're used to seeing from him. My favorite performance of his is probably in The Passenger, which if you haven't seen that movie, definitely go do it. I don't think I have the nerves to sit there and watch it again anytime soon, but that movie is insane and his performance carries that thing. But he crushed it here. No notes. As I said in the opening, we get performances by Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey, who played the two old married hippies. They're so much fun because they are an injected little bit of comedy and weirdness. I don't know how to describe it. Their performances were bizarre in a good way. That definitely aided into the kind of surreality of this film. I just didn't really anticipate it, and I think they crushed it. Also disgusting. But the star of this movie, hands down, is Willa Fitzgerald as the lady. She blew me away. Without this performance, I definitely wouldn't think as highly as I do of this movie.
Can you help me, please?
She is all over the place in the best way. By nature of this film, we never know exactly what is going on, and she gives an incredibly sad, strange, funny, horrifying performance that I think should be studied. If you care about acting, this is a masterclass. And as I've been hinting at before, there is some twists and reveals, specifically a big one, which we'll get into later. But another like I have about this movie is that there's not really just one. Each chapter has a bit of a reveal, but once we hit this big one, it still keeps getting weirder and worse and more interesting. It's not just hinged on one big twist or anything. It's wrapped around a series of these character and plot reveals that add to it. To add to that, the direction of this thing, top notch. I think this is JT Mollner's second feature film, which I would have honestly put this later in his filmography because it is directed pristinely. I know it's a small budget and they were working on tight timeframes. I think based on the Q&A, I heard they got shut down twice for like money issues. The studio wasn't liking the dailies and they pushed through. I think this is definitely a singular vision from this director who has a unique sense of style and feels very comfortable in that. There's a lot of these small moments between characters that feel so intimate. It's not overly stylistic like a Tarantino film. It feels pretty grounded in its approach, and through that, I think we can buy into all the bizarre things that are going on within the script. But we get these little subtle kind of hints, these subtle little camera moves that I think are great, and that is also a testament to Giovanni Ribisi's work as a DP. I think this might be his first feature film that he was the director of photography on. There's car chase sequences, there's like nighttime in-car talking sequences, there's like these kind of sex sequences, there's blood, there's all these different kinds of scenes that I think are on their own very hard to shoot, but are all done incredibly well and incredibly efficient. I think that's a big thing when I think about cinematography is how efficient can you get through a scene. We all know that goofy clip of Liam Neeson jumping over a fence with like 30 cuts and 8 different camera angles. This is the antithesis of that. A lot of long shots, but things that capture exactly what we need to as an audience with just that single shot. And I think that's definitely an incredible feat of cinematography. The lighting's spectacular. I love the way this movie looks. It's just stylized enough, and Giovanni Ribisi did a fantastic job with this film.
I'm in control.
No. Maybe I lied.
So all that is to say, I do have a couple dislikes. The most pressing one, I would say, is a questionable view on women. This film really hammers on a point about women that I think is like a little regressive or like overshooting the mark. I wasn't sure if it was being played for comedy necessarily. It was kind of confusing. I can't really say more without spoiling it, so I'll talk more in our spoilers section, but that was the biggest thing that stuck out to me as a dislike. I didn't think it was totally necessary, but we'll talk about that more in a second. The other thing I kind of dislike, and this is a nitpick, is the comedy of this movie. There's definitive comedic beats to this movie, but I wasn't prepared for them. Like, they are, again, kind of bizarre and kind of come out of nowhere. It shifts the tone in a way that I think is interesting, but a couple of times I was like, is this a joke or what are we doing here? It didn't really distract me from anything, and I don't think it took away from my overall enjoyment of the movie. I really like when movies like this can inject comedy. This had a very specific, bizarre kind of attempt at comedy that didn't always hit for me. So that's kind of a dislike. Nothing crazy, again, that ruins the movie. Definitely something I noticed and definitely something I felt. If you want to see this movie, go see it. I really liked it. And come back and let me know what you think. But for now, we're going to get on to some spoilers. Spoilers. What the is that?
I'm in control.
So the serial killer at the center of this movie is called the Electric Lady, and if you didn't pick up on this by now, the Electric Lady is Willa Fitzgerald's character, the Lady.
Oh my God!
It's such a big reveal, but also, like, just a small part of this. Oh my God, dude. I love this twist. We're set up in the beginning that Kyle Gallner's character, the Demon, is the serial killer. We see him like in these black and white shots, like holding someone down. We obviously see in the opening scene him like chasing down the lady in her red car, and he's got a big gun and he's firing at her, and she turns her car over and he's chasing her through the woods and stuff. It's intense, and so we think he's the serial killer, as we are set up to believe. You know, it plays on that idea that obviously most serial killers are men. That beginning, again, like I said, was chapter 3. In another chapter, there's this fantastic scene, and it's a little slower. It's basically the lady and the demon sitting in the front of the demon's truck, talking, having some drinks. They obviously met at a bar, and they're about to go into a hotel room and hook up. So they have this really interesting conversation where the lady says,
Do you have any idea the kind of risks a woman like me takes every time she agrees to have a little bit of fun? So I'm gonna have to ask you a question. Are you a serial killer?
It's this thing where we feel this tension because of what we saw in the opening chapter, which is him chasing her and firing a gun at her. So we know something's gonna happen, and we assume he's the killer. They're mostly boys.
Just because I asked you to cuff me at first doesn't mean that you don't need my permission.
So when we're inside the hotel room, we get these pretty intense scenes of the demon like hitting her, and she's crying, and like he's kind of pressuring her for sex. It's creepy and gross feeling, and she's crying and like having these awful things happen until she says the magic word.
Mr. Cephalophagus, I can't believe that you're into this.
That's the safe word. The lady is into a little consensual non-consent play here in the bedroom. And that reveal made my brain start spinning. Like, okay, how does that connect up to this intense chasing we started? Like, is this whole thing just like a weird sex thing? Did she forget the safe word? Is there a different safe word? Or like they just took it too far? That's exactly where my brain went.
Sorry about slitting your throat. Me and my girlfriend are just trying to get that spark back.
But I think that it's an interesting angle. Like, it's just a sex thing that got out of hand. That's wild and really interesting. This is where erotic thriller comes into play. It is that, but not in the way you think of it. This is no Fatal Attraction.
Where the summer days
Are we
Gonna...
okay?
If you still can in 5 minutes? Sure.
Then we get the big reveal that the lady is actually the electric lady, the serial killer at large, who drugs and carves her initials into men she kills. We find out that it didn't really go right, so after her failed attempt to kill him, she's on the run and he's after her. He's got to take her down. Obviously, she gets chased and she ends up at the hippie's house, Ed Begley Jr. and Barbara Hershey's house. Again, they're kind of this old, weird hippie couple who have disgusting breakfasts, but she ends up there and she's begging for help and they kind of wrap her up. And Ed Begley Jr. says, "We got to call the cops."
It's best we let them know.
Please, man, do me this favor, no cops.
She stabs him. I saw it coming right before it happened, and I think it was a fantastic reveal because it was also kind of played for comedy in a way, and we start to see the change in the lady's character, specifically how Willa Fitzgerald portrays her. She can turn that helpless victim thing on really well. Barbara Hershey's character takes off, and the demon, he finds her in a freezer and fires away.
Here, kitty, kitty, kitty.
So the scene I was referring to in my dislikes about the kind of weird views on women comes from this scene where the lady is handcuffed to this freezer. She has a gunshot wound, and Kyle Gallner, who turns out is a cop, he called in his buddies and was like, "You gotta get down here. I f***ed up, dude.
I f***ed up really, really, really hard.
And you guys gotta come out here and check this out." So it obviously looks bad, but he's waiting. She overpowers him and ends up killing him. So by the time the cops come, Kyle Gallner's character is dead on the floor, and it's just the lady handcuffed to the freezer. In these two cops, we have an old man cop, and then we have a young woman cop. The young woman goes to unhandcuff the lady, but the older cop is like,
Wait, we need to figure out what's going on here first.
She needs medical attention now. That's protocol.
Protocol is that we call it in, and we wait for the EMTs and homicide to show up.
It's okay. I'm gonna get you out.
We'll wait here for the EMTs.
The victim needs medical attention. Our job is to do what we need to do to keep her alive. Just because I have a vagina doesn't mean you shouldn't listen to a thing I have to say.
It's kind of this like over show of like trusting women, but I don't really know what the scene's trying to say. Like, are you saying no, we shouldn't trust women because they could be murderous serial killers in the midst of a blood rage? I just don't know what it's saying, because it's almost played over the top for like comedy maybe.
This has nothing to do with your vagina.
But it kind of sticks with that point. Like, it doesn't do anything to kind of subvert that point. Obviously, she is the electric lady, but I'm like, what are you saying here?
You dumb bitch.
Am I wrong? Like, did I read this scene wrong? Sound off and let me know. I'm not trying to be like overly sensitive here, but I think it was just kind of a weird take that I just don't really see the benefit of like focusing on that the way they did. I don't know. But a scene I truly do love is the final scene. What happens is the lady, after she kills all these people, she's still injured. So she is walking in the road and she flags down this lady to stop and help her. So this other woman gets out, helps the lady into her truck, sees that the lady has a gun, and shoots her first. So the final shot of the movie is the lady sitting in the passenger seat, just dying and bleeding out from this gunshot wound. And we see it all. And it's slow and it's painful. It's a haunting shot. Considering all the things we've been put through up until this point, it lets us kind of reflect on how we got here. You know, you kind of almost feel bad for her, even though she sucks. And since we're not really told any of her backstory, we're not given all this exposition or setup on why, where, how, or whatever. It just happens and we get to experience it. So in these moments, we're kind of left to wonder how she got there. And like I mentioned before, with the cinematography is done in a way that is deeply compelling and really, really impactful. Just having to sit there that whole time, it's like a minute's long shot and we're just seeing this person die. It's wild. I think it's fantastic and I really enjoyed this ending. And what I think was a bold choice that we learned from Giovanni Ribisi at the Q&A was that they shot this final scene only this one way. Single camera, single shot. They didn't get coverage for it. They didn't do anything else. So that was the shot they had and they had to go with. But anyway, I'm not the only one who liked this movie. In fact, there's lots of different opinions on this movie, so let's consult the old IMDb to see the highs and the lows.
You dumb bitch.
As of this recording, Strange Darling has a 7.1 on IMDb, which is lower than Heretic, which I think is dumb. Anyway, we're gonna start with a couple 10-star reviews. I'm going into this blind. Alright, we got a 10 out of 10 review from HJ Shores? It's true, to fully enjoy this masterpiece, you should go in completely blind. Don't read reviews, don't watch TikToks, just stay away from all media regarding this film. I agree with this. I went in blind and I was very surprised in a delightful way. To start, I think this is one of the best performances by an actress that I've ever seen. Willa Fitzgerald owned the screen and my attention throughout the entire film. I mostly agree, I wouldn't say one of the best performances I've ever seen, but it's up there, man. It was also great to see Kyle Gallner on the big screen. Clever, thought-provoking, and fast-paced. Just leave your assumptions at the door and go on this wild ride. My husband is notorious for falling asleep during movies, but he stayed wide awake for this one and loved it too. Aw, there's nothing worse than people snoring through a movie at a theater. Alright, we got another 10 out of 10 review from T McMaster 031405. I didn't need to know your social security number. This film is fantastic. A true throwback to 90s, early 2000s thrillers that have you guessing and thinking about every single frame you watch. The director shot it on 35mm film, which I had the pleasure of seeing it projected in that format, which I gotta say, makes this film the most beautiful looking film of 2024. That actually is something I didn't mention earlier, but was made very apparent by the movie itself. There's a whole title card that says, "This movie was shot on 35mm. Like, the film did look great, and you could tell it was shot on film in a good way, but, like, felt kind of hokey to, like, put that in there on screen. It's kind of like setting up your own movie with a little bit of IMDb trivia to start. Can you imagine like Christopher Nolan at the beginning of every one of his movies, like the title screen, but also shot on 70mm IMAX.
You wouldn't believe how much film this is, bro.
I don't know. Maybe that's just a personal thing. Okay, sorry, back to T McMaster. The acting is phenomenal from both Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. A true cat and mouse game between the two, and who is really the evil one. Maybe they both are at the end. No. I mean, Kyle Gallner's character cheated on his wife to be there. They made that clear, and that sucks. But she's clearly the evil one. She's the serial killer. What are you talking about?
Don't get too excited. I'm still up by 1.
That was fun, but we gotta get into some 1-star reviews. How low can you go? How low can you go? Alright, we got a 1 out of 10 star review from Gail Moon. I had high hopes for Strange Darling based on positive reviews, but yet again, the reviews were wrong. From the outset, the movie failed to engage me. How? What an awesome opener. You're lame. While there were occasional moments that showed promise, they were few far in between. The camera work stood out as the film's sole redeeming quality. To each their own, but really? Strange Darling attempts to capture a 1970s vibe, but this feels more like a shallow imitation than a genuine homage to the era's cinema. I didn't really mention that either. This does feel like a movie that takes place out of time. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of technology necessarily. There's some needle drops earlier that are some old songs and stuff, and it doesn't feel like it's supposed to take place in any specific time. I'd say obviously a little more modern, but I wouldn't say it feels like an actual homage to 70s cinema necessarily. I'm so over watching America's portrayal of big trucks and guns. This approach to depicting American culture no longer resonates and instead feels cliche. It's a reminder that strong cinematography alone cannot salvage a film that misses the mark in storytelling and relies too heavily on graphic content. But this movie isn't about big trucks and guns. What are you talking about? This movie is about none of that. It kind of happens to have like one big pickup truck in it and like obviously a gun. There's murders. But I wouldn't say it's trying to depict like American culture, like guns and trucks. Like, I don't know. That feels weird. Thanks, Gail. All right, our next review is from Romana LBOIX. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry if that's like a name or something. My bad. 78187. It is a drama with some big noise here and there. Then there is some slight shooting, not really sex as promised, and no violence at all. Are you one of those people who fall asleep in movie theaters? You know how I feel about them. It is tagged as thriller and horror because someone had paid for it, otherwise nobody would watch that garbage. I don't really know what that means. There's nothing good about it. Bad acting, bad script, bad direction, bad palette of colors. That's really specific. It is not worth a watch. You will forget as soon as it is finished. It is a Tarantino film without any Tarantino or any film at all. It's literally shot on 35mm. We just discovered that. Just a bunch of images randomly put there, and then they switch the chapters. Anyway, it could be done in any other order, and it would be the same predictable and boring. You should stop drinking before you start typing, but weird take. Basically incoherent? Get it together, man. So that was weird. But for me, this is definitely a recommend. I think this is gonna play well for anybody who loves like darker genre films, especially darker genre films with a little bit of a comedic twist in it. I can't wait to see more from writer-director JT Mollner as well as DP Giovanni Ribisi, and I always love seeing Kyle Gallner stuff, and definitely will be seeing more Willa Fitzgerald joints. If it's streaming, go watch it. If it's in a movie theater still, go watch it. But let me know in the comments down below, did you see this movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you agree, disagree? Do you want to fight me? Don't fight me, actually. I'm frail. Look at me. Please don't hurt me, but let me know what you think. And finally, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you made it this far, make sure to do the likes and the subscribes. All that stuff really helps. Comment, like I said before. If you hit the bell for notifications, you can go to the drop-down menu and get the carrier pigeon option. Hope you have a good carpet cleaner, because goddamn. But thanks, all that stuff helps, and yeah, more videos, I guess. We're gonna do more stuff. And also, if you're wondering, my safe word is dungarees.